Hello, welcome to my film review for Mr. Jones. This film is based on the work of Gareth Jones, who was a Welsh reporter in the 1930s, and he was trying to understand how the Soviet Union could have so much money when the rest of the world was getting so poor. So he goes off to Russia to interview Stalin. He never actually meets Stalin, but his journey does take him into Ukraine, where he discovers a mass famine, which is an artificially made famine where everyone is forced to work to death basically, and all the food is sent over to Moscow in Russia, where they're living the high life, and they're saying, oh, isn't this communist thing wonderful, isn't Stalin amazing? And they have no idea that so many people are dying for it. And this all actually really did happen, and after I watched the film I actually looked up the Ukrainian famine, and I read about Gareth Jones, and I read about Walter Duranty, and also George Orwell, which most people would have heard of George Orwell, and he actually got some of his ideas for his work from the Ukrainian famine. It's a very good film. It's well written, it's well directed, it's well scripted, it's well acted. Everything about it is really enjoyable. I went into this film not knowing much about it, and I've come out of the film actually thinking that was a good film, and I want to learn more about the history. And yeah, anything that does that I consider to be a good film. If I watch a film and I was just like, that was an okay film, but I actually come out the other end of the film and thinking, actually I really want to learn more, and so I did. I have learned more. Not so much about the film itself, but actually the real historical events which inspired the film. I would say it is definitely worth a watch. It's almost 2 hours long, so it is a long film, but it kept me gripped the whole way through. It kept me entertained. And there's long periods where nothing is being said, but it still holds your attention because of what's going on. So in that regard, it's a very visual film. Although there are areas of the film which are very dialogue heavy, so as long as you're hearing what's going on, that grabs you. And then there are other parts which are very dialogue, especially when he's in Ukraine. He's going from village to village and he's basically finding dead people, and the way that the people are just being thrown onto carts. And it is very powerful moments in those scenes. And I think the director was really trying to get across how horrifying all this is and how horrific it is, because obviously it is. And when he came back and reported his story, he wasn't believed, and no one believed him for a long time. Partly because they didn't want to believe it, and partly because they were corrupt and they had their own interests, and basically certain people had risen to a certain level of power and influence precisely because they were covering up the story. Walter Duranty, for example, the reporter, one of them, he was celebrated at first, and I was reading about him, and now in modern times, looking back, he's widely regarded as a terrible journalist. But at the time, everyone loved him. I highly recommend this film. Mr. Jones is a very good film. I should warn you, about halfway through there is scenes of drug usage, so if that bothers you, then that's there, but it's only one scene and they don't make a big deal of it. Other than that, it's basically just an investigation. It's basically a story. Basically, when they were creating this film, they wanted to tell the story of what happened in the early 30s in Ukraine to these millions of people. All these voices which have been silenced. I never learnt about this in school. This is a whole chapter of history I knew nothing about until I just watched the film just now. So for that, I'd have to say it's a really good film, because now I'm a little bit wiser. I know more about it, and I can see more about how the human condition can be evil and corrupt, but I knew that anyway. So yeah, I enjoyed it. It's a good film. Everything about it is good. I did find at the very beginning the camera was a bit, in some styles of film, the camera moves around a lot, and I don't like that. I was thinking, oh God, I hope it isn't like 2 hours of shaky cam, but that seemed to stop. Yeah, so I don't know why. Maybe they filmed the first few scenes and then realised that shaky cam wasn't for them. I don't like films that do that. There's quite a few films where they just have the shaky cam. I don't like that. I've never liked that. But it's only at the beginning, so maybe they realised as they were filming it and editing it, putting it all together, they were like, oh, actually, this doesn't really work. So the camera angles stopped being like that, and it's more of the steady cam and actually something decent. Although it does change. When I mentioned the drug scene earlier, you see the woman take drugs, and then suddenly the cameras go crazy for a while. But I think that's to emphasise her getting high. Anyway, I'm just waffling on now. It's a good film. Go watch it. That's all you need to know, really. And yeah, I just thought it was very well. It's got who's in it? It's got Vanessa Kirby in it, so she's a very good actress. She plays the role of Ada Brooks very well. It's got James Norton, who plays Gareth Jones, and again, very good. And then everyone else who's in it, it's just an all-round good, well-made film. I liked it, although it is nearly 2 hours, so if that's longer than your attention span can hold, then it's probably not for you. But otherwise, yeah, I liked it. All right, and I'll see you in my next film review. Okay, bye.